Hey guys, so if you're anything like me, you bought a lot of jig heads, a lot of different lures, and 6 months down the track, you realize they don't really fit for you anymore. And you end up with a whole heap of different little jig heads with a whole bunch of different attachments and heads on them. So something like that, like your Chinlocks. So I'm finding, especially now that I'm using a lot of softer um, plastics, so not your stretchy Z-Man 10 times tough. And you put them on one of these with the Chinlocks, and not even with a fish, just after about 10 or so casts, it just tears through the lip of the plastic, and you end up with a nice little tear underneath there. You either have to chop a centimetre or so of the front of the plastic off and keep using it, or throw it in and grab another one. So I'm finding that I want to use jig heads that have these little screw-on bits. Sorry, it's out of focus. Anyway, those little corkscrews. So some of them come pre-rigged with them on there, and that's awesome. But all of them, when they come pre-rigged, have the head, I guess, aligned with the plastic, so it's not kinked around and not flat like your Chinlocks. So the problem with that, I find, is if there's no weight or I want more weight, you get in your loop knot, looks great, but if you see here, it's on one side of the loop and doesn't hang straight up and down. So it's going to pull your plastic on an angle. Instead of sinking nice and fluttering, it's going to pull it towards that side in the loop, and it's going to be on a bit of an angle and sinking. So instead of sinking flat, it's going to have a bit of an angle. Sometimes maybe guys like that, maybe they finally get the bite. I don't know, I'm pedantic, I don't really want it on an angle. So I've gone through a whole bunch of my old jig heads, and I found a bunch that are your standard sort of worm hook, and they do have that little hole facing, I don't know, up down instead of side to side. That's what I'm going to call it, up down. But you want to not tear your tip of your plastic off with this thing. So I found today some of these little glow beads. Normally people put these on their line to attract when they're bait fishing and stuff. But these little glow beads can be really useful, using them as a stopper, because they're quite soft and stretchy. So simply, you can alter one of these to make it into one of those corkscrew heads by simply popping a corkscrew head on your hook. So feeding it up to there, and simply getting one of these glow beads, and instead of threading it on your line, you thread it on the end of your hook, push him up, all the way over and around, and seeing it up there. So basically that bead just acts as like a keeper. Actually, I put my finger there. So it focuses, acts like a keeper. So you can tie your hook on, and that's not really going to move down and around because that bead's going to hold it on there. And then you can attach whatever small sinker you want onto your line, and it's going to hang underneath. I know you can't. Where's it? There we go. So it's going to hang underneath through your loop knot instead of being on the side like it would with one of these fellas sitting on this one side or the other. Alright, so it means you can effectively turn just a plain old worm hook into something like this, where you've got your screw head locking your plastic on, so the soft tip isn't going to tear off as easily when you're casting. When you're flicking into snags, running it over snag, it's going to be nice and weedless still. I don't really think the bead's going to attract any attention, especially unless you're fishing really deep. But in a metre or two, 3, 4, 5, probably not going to do too much for you. But it's going to hold them all nicely there. So that lets you change your weight that you want. Some people really do like the weight in the belly. You can just crimp a split shot on in the belly if you really prefer that kind of weight for that more horizontal sink. I really like the vertical sink. I seem to hop. So lift and then drop and lift and drop. So I like a little ball sinker on the front of my plastics. But But yeah, that can be an option as well. Even with the prawn, it's the same thing. Some of these things are really soft at the front. This is an atomic prong. Simple. So I've rigged up a few on different hooks. The only thing to keep in mind is that it does reduce the the length of the plastic that's going to be on that bit of the hook. So I find if you'd normally rig something on a 4.0, you probably want to buy a 5.0 and do this, or 6.0 if you use it on a 5.0, that sort of thing. But yeah, it's really straightforward and great use of a few little tidbits. So I just bought a bunch of these little corkscrew things. You can find them on eBay. Some tackle shops sell them, but they're really expensive just for a tiny little piece of wire. So this was a pretty good find on eBay. I think about like $5 or $6 for like 50. So that was pretty good. So yeah, play around, modify with things yourself. So yeah, essentially lets you turn, these normal weedless hooks into ones with the corkscrew with soft plastic keeper, but it makes them one size smaller essentially. But yeah, great little use for those beads and little corkscrew. I'm rigging a heap up to go chasing barra on Saturday. Thanks guys, see you later.